Right now, if your car were running, it would be lighting a fire. A real, actual fire, up to 50 times a second, a few inches from your feet. So here's a question you've probably never asked. Why isn't your car on fire? If there's an open flame igniting that fast under the hood, why isn't the whole engine a melted, burning fireball? Here's the secret this whole video is about. It would be, instantly, if it weren't for one of the most precise pieces of engineering humans have ever built. Every single part inside an engine exists to do one job: cage a fire, steal its push, and snuff it out before it escapes, over and over, and never once let it win. A while back, I told you your engine explodes. That was a cheat, because if this fire ever really exploded, all at once, it would tear the engine to pieces. It doesn't, it stays caged. So today we'll freeze one fire at the instant it's born, and watch, in slow motion, exactly how the cage holds. One cylinder, 10,000 times slower. Clock's frozen, let's go in. And here's why you've never noticed the cage doing its job. It works far too fast to see. Each cylinder runs its complete cycle, the whole breathe in, squeeze, burn, breathe out routine, up to 50 times a second, and your eye gives up around 10. So to almost everyone who's ever driven one, the engine is just a sound, a feeling, and a sealed metal box you quietly trust with your life at 70 miles an hour. Nobody watches the fire get caught because nobody can. We're about to. But before we start the clock, you need to meet the cage, because it's really only about 8 parts doing all the work, and I'd bet you can't name 3 of them. Everything happens inside one space, the cylinder. Picture a smooth metal tube, closed at the top, and think of it as a tiny, incredibly tough, fireproof room, the main cell of our cage. All the drama of this whole video happens in a room about the size of a coffee mug. Sitting inside that room, sliding up and down, is the piston, a solid metal slug that fits the tube almost perfectly. Almost, because almost is a problem. Any gap and the pressure you're about to build just leaks straight past. So around the piston sit 2 or 3 springy metal rings, riding in grooves, pressed against the wall. They're the seal and the reason your engine holds pressure at all. Cylinder, piston, rings. That's the room and the thing moving inside it. Now, what makes it move, and where does the motion go? Bolted to the bottom of the piston is the connecting rod. Think of it as the engine's shin bone. And the other end of that rod connects to the single most underrated part in your whole car, the crankshaft. Hold that name, it's about to be the hero of this video. Up top, capping the room, are the valves, little trapdoors that swallow fuel and air, then spit out the leftovers. There's usually one dedicated to breathing in, one to breathing out, and nestled right between them, the part everyone has heard of. The spark plug, whose entire job is to make one tiny, perfectly timed spark. 8 parts. A room, a slug, a seal, a shin bone, a mystery shaft, 2 trapdoors, and a spark. That's an engine. Now let's start the clock and watch them fight. Clock starts. Stroke 1. The breath. The intake valve, the in trapdoor, swings open, and the piston drops down the cylinder, away from the top. And here's the thing people miss. Nothing is sucked in by magic. The piston pulling down leaves more room in a sealed space, so the pressure inside drops below the air outside, and the ordinary atmosphere, the same air pressing on you right now, shoves a mist of fuel and air in through the open valve to fill the gap. It doesn't pour in gently either. It rushes and rolls and tumbles deliberately because a still puddle of fuel burns badly. You want it swirled into a fine, even fog. Watch the swirl. Now the piston's at the bottom, the room is full of that fog, and the trapdoor slams shut. The stopwatch has barely moved. Both trapdoors are shut now. The room is sealed. Stroke 2. The squeeze. The crankshaft swings the piston back up, and it packs all that fog into a space roughly 10 times smaller than where it started. And when you squeeze a gas, you don't just make it smaller, you make it hot. Cram those fuel and air molecules close enough, and their temperature climbs, fast, hundreds of degrees, purely from the squeezing. This is the tense part. Pressure's rising, temperature's rising, the mixture is primed and packed and desperate to react, and it is being held for a few thousandths of a second right on the edge. In a diesel, by the way, you squeeze so hard it lights itself right here, no spark needed, but that's a different video. In your gasoline engine, the mixture waits. It's waiting for one thing. Here it is. The moment everyone calls the explosion, and the moment I prove it isn't one. The spark plug fires, a tiny electric arc, and it doesn't happen at the top. It fires a hair early, often 10 degrees or more of crank rotation before the piston even reaches the top. Because what comes next takes time. Now watch, in slow motion, what the spark actually starts. Not a bang, but a flame front. A wall of fire that begins at the spark and travels outward across the chamber, burning the fog as it goes, like a wave rolling across the room. It moves fast, tens of meters a second, but it is not instant. It has a speed, it has a direction. For a few thousandths of a second, half the room is on fire and half of it isn't yet. That's the secret. Your engine doesn't detonate. It runs a tiny, controlled grass fire, and the whole art of building an engine is keeping that fire a smooth, traveling burn. Because if it ever goes off all at once, that's called knock, and it hammers the engine to death. And now that traveling fire does the only thing your engine is actually for. The burning fog expands, hard, and slams the piston back down the cylinder. The single push, the payoff, the reason all of this exists. Here's the fact worth tattooing on the hood. Of the 4 strokes, breathe in, squeeze, burn, breathe out. Only this one makes power. 1 in 4. The other 3 are unpaid setup and cleanup. The engine spends 3/4 of its effort getting ready to be shoved exactly once. It's gloriously inefficient, and it's the deal every gasoline car on Earth has quietly accepted for 150 years. But that one push is violent, and it's pointed straight down, in a dead straight line. Which leaves us with the problem this whole machine was really built to solve. Your wheels don't go up and down, they go round. So how on earth do you turn a hammer blow into a spin? Before we solve that, the room has to be cleaned, or the next breath chokes on its own smoke. Stroke 4, the breathe out. The out trapdoor swings open, the piston rides back up and shoves the spent, burnt gas out through the valve and down the exhaust. Slam the door and you're exactly back where you started. An empty room, piston at the top, ready for another breath. 1 full cycle, done. And look at the stopwatch. That whole sequence took about 2/100ths of a second. To be precise, the burn and the push, the part this whole video is really about, take about 1/100th. The full cycle, with all the breathing and housekeeping wrapped around it, about 2. Your engine's been doing that over and over in every cylinder without you thinking about it once. Which means it's finally time to solve the problem I parked, turning that straight line punch into a smooth, spinning wheel. Remember the part I told you to hold on to, the crankshaft? This is its moment, and it's the cleverest piece of everyday engineering most people never notice. The piston can only do one thing, go straight up, straight down. A hammer. But look at the bottom of that connecting rod, where it meets the crankshaft. The crank isn't a straight axle, it has an offset elbow, a section kicked out to one side called a throw. So as the piston shoves the rod straight down, the rod pushes on that offset elbow, and an offset can't move in a straight line. It's forced to swing around the center. Straight line push, in, rotation, out. It's exactly how your legs work on a bicycle. Your knees pump up and down, but the pedals, offset from the center, turn that into a circle that drives the wheel. The crankshaft is the bicycle pedal of your engine. That hammer blow you just watched. This is where it becomes the thing that actually turns your wheels. But remember what we just learned. Only one of those 4 strokes actually pushes, which means a single cylinder on its own gets 1 shove, then coasts through 3 dead strokes before the next. That's not smooth, that's a lurch. Shove, nothing, 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 shove. A 1-cylinder engine basically shakes. So how does your car glide? Simple and beautiful. It has more than 1 cylinder, usually 4 or 6 or 8, all joined to the same crankshaft, and they're deliberately staggered so they take turns. While cylinder 1 is doing its power push, cylinder 3 is breathing in, cylinder 4 is squeezing, cylinder 2 is clearing out. The pushes are spread out so evenly that there is always 1 cylinder firing, handing off to the next like runners in a relay. That staggered sequence has a name, the firing order, and it's why a good engine doesn't buck and shudder, but spins with that smooth, endless purr. 4 little hammers, never swinging at the same time, adding up to 1 seamless turn. One last question, because a good one should be nagging you. All those trapdoors, the valves, opening and closing at exactly the right instant, in every cylinder, over and over. Who's timing that? Nothing in this engine has a brain. The answer is a second spinning shaft up top, the camshaft, and it's studded with egg-shaped lobes, cams. As the cam spins, the fat part of each egg rolls around and shoves its valve open. The skinny part lets it snap shut. And here's the elegant bit. The camshaft is driven by the crankshaft, by a belt or a chain, geared so it turns at exactly half the crank speed. Because each valve needs to open once every 2 crank spins, once per full cycle. Everything in the engine is chained to everything else, spinning in a fixed ratio so that the spark, the valves, and the piston are always in perfect lockstep. Nobody's steering it. It's pure mechanical choreography, set once, running forever. So let's put it back together and take the brakes off time. 1 room. A piston that breathes in, squeezes, and gets shoved by a traveling fire. Once. A crankshaft that turns that shove into a spin. 4 of them taking turns so it never stops. A camshaft keeping every trapdoor on schedule. Now watch what happens when the clock runs at real speed. 1 cycle. Now 10 a second. Now 30. Now 50. And it becomes the blur you started with. The purr, the sound, the sealed metal box. Except now you know exactly what's inside it. Every time you idle at a red light, this whole gorgeous sequence runs half a dozen times a second in each cylinder, dozens the moment you accelerate. A controlled fire turned into a perfect circle, hundreds of millions of times before the engine wears out. It never was an explosion, it was always a cage, the most precise cage ever built, holding a tiny fire just long enough to steal its push, and never once letting it out. If watching 1 cylinder in slow motion just rewired how you'll hear your car forever, that's the whole point of this place. Pip and me, pulling apart the machines and the world you live inside, 1 piece at a time. Subscribe so you don't miss the next teardown. And if you want to see all of this happen at once, under real stress, next we strap in for what actually happens in the engine, the gearbox, and the tires in the few seconds it takes to go 0 to 60. It's on the card on screen. If you haven't seen how this whole engine came to exist, 160 years of getting 1 explosion right, there's a card for that one too. Now tell me down in the comments, what do you want us to take apart next? A jet engine? A gearbox? Your own heart, which does a version of this every single second? You name it, we'll open it up.